And welcome again to the Dave LewAllen podcast. We cover sports stories, news makers, and difference makers in our community and across the state of Michigan. You find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and our new partnership with WJR Radio on thegreatvoice.com. And we're thrilled for that partnership for the Dave LewAllen podcast as well, and more on that to come in the weeks ahead. It is my pleasure today to have with me Tim Staudt. He is a legend in Michigan sportscasting circles, the longest tenured person on the air, I think, in Michigan television history. He'll tell me that for sure. He's in the MAB Hall of Fame. He's in the Lansing Sports Hall of Fame. He is a Hall of Famer. Tim Staudt joining me today on the Dave LewAllen podcast. Tim, thanks for this. Happy to talk about your career, the incredible longevity, and all the years in Lansing and your observations on Michigan State sports. Thanks for the time. Appreciate that.
Happy to be with you, Dave. We go back a long ways together. You don't look like you were ever ready to retire the first place. I wish I looked as young as you look, to be honest with you, but happy to visit with you. I wish we could do it a little bit more often, frankly.
Well, we'll try to work on that. All right, so let's get this longevity thing on the table right off the bat. You know, you're often referred to as the dean in mid-Michigan sports. Heck, you're the dean everywhere. I mean, with the run that you've had that began in television at WJIM, and then continues on for years and years and years at WILX. What an incredible run, and it ain't over yet.
Well, I hope not. This would be year 56, and I hope still counting on both TV and radio. And as you know from your own long run, a lot of it depends on, it's like George Perlis used to tell me all the time, you're still fooling them. And I always said, yeah, I think I'm still fooling them. But, you got to have a lot of breaks along the way. You need good health, knock on wood. And, of course, I think you got to enjoy what you're doing. My oldest, who's 38, says, if you like what you're doing, you never want to retire. If you don't like what you're doing, then when can I retire? And I think there's probably something to that. And I still enjoy it a great deal. It's radio in the morning, television in the evening, and I've cut back a little bit. I haven't done the 11 o'clock sports since 2016, and that frankly made it a little bit more palatable. But at age 76, I still enjoy it a great deal. The technology's passed me by long ago. This is the first Zoom I think I can remember ever doing in any way, and if our staffer, Ben Shockley here at WILX-TV hadn't set this up, it might have been telephone only, but he did, so away we go.
Yeah, away we go indeed. Yeah, the technology thing. And here's the story for people at home watching as well. Yes, we have known each other for a long time. In fact, I followed you in my first television job at Channel 6 when you left Channel 6 in Lansing to go to Channel 10. That was 1980, and I want to tell you, as a kid, which I was at the time, first television job, trying to learn the business. You talk about huge shoes to fill. Our mutual friend, Rusty Hills, really helped me at least try to find my way, but I frankly was mostly lost. But that's how far we go back. And that was a huge change for you at that time to move from Channel 6 to Channel 10. Kind of take us through that a little bit.
Well, I got fortunate because when I was at Michigan State as a student, and I had written for a weekly newspaper in East Lansing, and the local radio guy read it, and he said, we'd like to add an afternoon weekday radio sports 5-minute show at 3 o'clock, whatever it was. And it was a lot simpler world in those days. So I thought, and I never thought about it. I thought I was going to be a writer because I was a journalism major at Michigan State. but I got a little tape recorder and tried it, and it was fun. Well, when you start getting into that, as you know, you meet other people in the media, and I got to meet the WJIM-TV guy at the time, and he said, hey, you ought to come over to, because we're TV and radio. They're looking for a part-time guy in radio news. You get your foot in the door. They all know you and so forth. And the other guy they had there at the time in 1969 was George Blaha. He and I did radio there for a while. George never got into the TV end of it there, and I just kept nosing around. And, in those days, you're not corporately owned, you're privately owned. And the private owner then, Hal Gross, they hired me, and they were looking for somebody to do 11 p.m. television weather. Now, this is a smaller market, right? So I went over there and said, hey, I'm already here at night doing radio news while I go to school during the day. It won't cost you a dime for me to do that. And that was music to his ears. I didn't know one thing about weather and didn't need to know a whole lot if you could ad-lib through the whole thing. So I took an audition, and I knew that I had a chance at this thing because the TV weather guy did a morning radio shift. So they're trying to work this all out. And like everything else, how do we save money doing this? And I said, if it doesn't work, you can always just put me back in radio news or whatever. Well, it did work. But the moment the sports guy got into it, I told him at the time I wanted to do TV sports, but he had a rule that you had to be graduated from college, and I was in my senior year. I wasn't going to be done till the summertime. Frankly, I pulled a few shenanigans on him, because when it opened in May of 1970, I said the same thing. You don't have to pay me anything. I just want the chance to do it. He gave me a chance to do it. And that December, he gave me a full-time raise to $7,000 a year, which I thought was all the money in the world. And then away we went. I was there till 1980, and they called me from the rival station where I am now. And at that time, after 10 years, I thought, how are you going to move around in this thing? And it was tough to leave because the guy had given me a break in the first place. It was hard to do. But in hindsight, it was clearly the best move I ever made because he gave me the freedom that I didn't have previously there. He almost hired me back, but fortunately I didn't go back because I don't think it would have worked out. Sometimes when you leave one station for another station, going back, it isn't quite the same. And it's worked out here 45 years later. I'm talking to you today, so it's worked out so far.
I'll say it's worked out, indeed. The longevity is incredible. I mean, what does this mean to you? The longevity that you've had in such a fickle business, for anybody to be on the air for 50 plus years is amazing in and of itself. But you've done that. You've outlasted them all, Tim Staudt.
Well, when I get asked about it, Dave, first of all, I think you have to decide how much do you appreciate what you're doing and how much do you want to risk losing it. And I appreciated what I was doing. And yeah, there were times along the way that there were some days better than others, or things I was asked to do that I didn't want to do. But my bottom line was I didn't want to lose what I had. And I thought all the time, you can replace me in a heartbeat. And I felt that way today. So I always tell students all the time, the first thing you got to decide is, do you want to risk losing what you have now? And through the whole thing, I never once said, well, this is the whatever size market, 100 and whatever, or 98, whatever it was. I don't need to go to 54 to 38 to 12 and then get to 5. My whole thing was quality of life. And I remember when we got married 41 years ago, she was an award-winning school teacher, an elementary teacher. She just retired a short time ago after 44 years. And we hadn't had kids yet. And she got pregnant at the time I got a chance to go to the NBC station in Chicago and do both TV and radio. And that was a hard decision to make. In the end, I thought if it's there now, it might be there later. Let's get the oldest born of the 3 boys, then let her stay doing what she's going to do. And I always thought quality of life was better than market size, and the quality of life that we've been blessed with staying where we are. I never planned to stay and I never planned to go. What I planned to do was day after day after day, try to make it as fulfilling as I could possibly make it, because you only get so much of this. It's like Tony Dungy says, nobody's promised tomorrow. So appreciate, and I've always appreciated a great deal, and that's been kind of the linchpin through the whole thing. Plus, I've been fortunate with ownership. Has been there like 6 in radio, and that's gone 33 years, and the television end of this 56. But I've always appreciated, and they've all been good to me too. And I think part of that's because I was happy to do what they got enough problems to deal with in broadcasting, like you say, day after day, era after era. And I was asked to do, I tell people, if you're asked to do something, you may not like it, but do it cheerfully because tomorrow's a brand new day and this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, for sure. Yeah. And in this business, with the rapid change that has happened, certainly well before the time that I got out, and even accelerated today. Right. Yeah, I mean, if you're hanging on by fingernails, so be it. But it is a changing animal, to be sure.
Well, one other thing too, Dave, is Lansing is not a major market, but it's in a Big Ten market, and there's huge Michigan influence here besides Michigan State. Excuse me. I never wanted to be identified as a Michigan State guy per se, because in the capital of the state of Michigan here, you have all different backgrounds, cultures. I mean, yes, it's dominant Michigan State, but there's an enormous Michigan presence as well. And there's enormous interest in the Detroit pro teams. Northern Michigan is an enormous resort area. Golf is huge all over the state of Michigan. I mean, recreation for people here is a huge deal. So there was always something I thought that was relevant to cover over and above maybe the size of the market itself. And so there's always been, fall's huge around here, as you know, with all the football. And then when the Detroit teams are doing well, that just adds to the interest of it. So there's something to talk about. I mean, as we're speaking today, in the middle of the football season, who do you want? Michigan State, the Lions, and the high schools in this area have a lot of interest and background in this market size, separate from Detroit, because the communities around mid-Michigan follow a lot of what the high schools do. So it's easy for us to cover them through the years as well.
All right, we're going to get into Michigan State, some of the stories, some of the individuals that you have covered, that you have interacted with over the years, some of the colorful stories that relate to some of those individuals. But one last thing about TV and the uniqueness of your situation, your television station in the market. I mean, you have a robust sports department. You have a real commitment to covering local high school sports and sports in general there. That is becoming more and more unique as it relates to local television. I mean, some staffs have been eliminated, people cut, resources eliminated. You've been lucky in that regard as well, right? At WILX in Lansing, with the commitment that is still there for local sports.
Well, as you know, the industry's changed. I mean, when I started, we had the 6 and 11 o'clock news, period. Nothing on Sunday, 11 o'clock on Saturday. And if you wanted to do the job, you were the one that did it. Then eventually we added one person. But when you're young, that's what you enjoyed doing. So you didn't think about all the time off you need and vacations with families and that. But now digital is enormously, we have four-time sports people, and the rival station in town has 4 as well. They always say to me, don't mention that. Don't say anything, because they'll say we got to cut back. Well, we have 2 young people who are as good as Ben Shockley and Owen Ozist. I mean, they can do anything digitally. They edit it. I mean, what their talent level is with the technology compared to when I started, it isn't even in the same stratosphere. And Fred Heumann, who has a Detroit background, and he was in Lansing for 16 years. When he became available, it worked out that my recommendation worked. I said, we need somebody else who's got contacts and blah, 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 the whole deal. So we have 2 old geezers, him and me, and 2 guys in their 20s, and it's blended very well for everything that they ask us to do. Well, now, we have a 5 o'clock news, a 5:30 news, a 6 o'clock news, an 11 o'clock news. The company here just bought the Fox station. So when we add them, that's going to be more. So it's not like any of the 4 of us are sitting around with nothing to do, because even in a market this size with so much more programming, I do a Sunday morning 30-minute show at 11 a.m. So believe me, we've got a lot of programming time that in this subject area that we have to fill. And toward your point, a lot of the major stations across America and the bigger markets don't have 4 full-time guys. Some of them have maybe 2 and that's it. And then somebody else fills in when they need more sports help.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. Tim Staudt, the co-sports director, the sports anchor at WILX-TV, Lansing legend, Michigan legend in broadcasting circles. My guest today on the Dave LewAllen podcast. He is in Lansing at Channel 10 for years. Well, grew up with Michigan State and Michigan State sports, has covered Michigan State sports for all these years. And Tim, I guess, you know, the people that you have come in contact with over the years and the characters in some cases as well, you know, whether it's Jud, whether it's Duffy, whether it's George Perlis, whether it's Tom Izzo. I mean, what an experience being a Gus Ganakis, all these great people.
Well, in East Lansing High School, I ran cross country with Duffy's son, Dan Doherty, and then lived with him for a couple of years in college to the end of Duffy's career in 1972. I ran cross country with John Hanna's son, Dave, who was a year older than me. My first baseman, my senior year, he was a junior, was Jim Brandstatter, who was a 3-sport standout athlete at East Lansing, and of course went to Michigan, came from a prominent family. Gus Ganakis was my algebra teacher in high school, and, you know, we're friends on and on and on and on. So just from that, because my dad was on the faculty at Michigan State, I grew up right across the street from Duffy. And let me tell you, we were in a middle-class neighborhood. If you saw the house that Duffy lived in for most of his career compared to the homes these coaches live in today, I mean, the few times that I drive by the old neighborhood and look at that, I say, I wonder if these people living there knew that one of the all-time popular college football coaches, Duffy Doherty, once lived in this house. But that was then. Okay, so yeah, so that grounding right away, you know, and I was Biggie Munn's paper boy. And I was his paper boy, and then, you know, he gave me hockey tickets as a kind of a tip if I got his paper to him on time. And when I started on the air in 1970, he was still the athletic director. Duffy's the football coach, and I was intimidated. You know, just a young guy in this thing. But there wasn't a lot of media competition then as there is today. You didn't have all these .coms and computers and podcasts and TV stations. You didn't have all that. There was just a few of us in the area, and they all treated me well, and Biggie was great to me. I still remember when he had his stroke in 1971 or 2, and it was terrible. His wife called me. I was working at the time. She said, would you come over? Biggie'd like to visit with you. And I went to the house, and he was in a wheelchair, and he literally could not talk. Whether today's medicine would have cured him to some degree, I'll never know. He got out of coaching because of his health. And then once he had the stroke, he never did go back to work, which I felt so bad for him because he treated me. He was wonderful to me all the time in my youthful part of my career as the athletic director of Michigan State. And toward that end, Duffy was too. It was a little bit sensitive because I lived with his son. Mm-hmm. So I was privy to stuff that normally I would never have been privy to. And at the end of Duffy's career, there were so many sensitive things about how he was going to depart Michigan State after 19 years. And I think his son had a few issues moving forward because and his daughter, Duffy's daughter, was very close to my sister. So there was all that. And then it was easier for me, frankly, once he got out, because then there wasn't going to be the conflict of do we report this or not, because there's a difference between what you get in the media and what you get personally and how you're going to use all that. That was a conflict toward the end, but that's a long time back, too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it ought to be in a book that you ought to yet write about your career and the experiences there, for sure. All right. We're big about stories, okay? And you've just given us some. Jud Heathcote comes to Michigan State. I'm sure there was the Jud who, but one of the unique characters in all of college sports. Tell me about Jud, your interactions, and the impact that he made at Michigan State.
Well, he was a wonderful guy. I miss him greatly. He was so different than anyone else. He never would have been able to coach in the environment that there is today because he was a principled guy. That there were, I mean, all of this money that's going on. I remember as Jud used to say that no coach should make more than the highest paid professor at a university. His wife always disagreed with him on that, especially after she saw what Izzo was getting through the years and all that. But Jud wasn't necessarily a money guy. I mean, he got me in large measure my Big Ten basketball television job for 10 years in play-by-play because he told the conference who had influence, he said, this is the guy you want to have doing these games and all that. And he didn't ever remind me that he had an imp. He said, you know, you were going to get it or lose it on your own. I offered a suggestion. I mean, he never used that in any way to remind me about his influence, but he had big influence. But he, I did a number of different shows with him. He took me on the team plane when it was more convenient because, in the Big Ten, it's not like the NBA where you're flying major market to major market. When you're flying Lansing to Cedar Rapids, to Madison, Wisconsin, to wherever it is in the league, you're not having, nonstop commercial flights. I had to drive to a lot of the games. And after 10 years of that, when all these contracts changed, I either had to give that up or give up the radio show that I do each morning. I didn't want to give up the radio. I enjoyed it too much, and there was too much value in it. So, and I'd had 10 years of the travel in the wintertime, and I said, I've done this now. So that came and went, but he was a big part of that. But you could poke fun at him. He was the greatest ad-lib speaker I have ever heard in my entire life. I remember calling up one time, say, I want to come over and visit with you in your office. I need some advice. Come on over. I said, Jud, I don't want to know anything about your basketball opinions. I don't need any of that. I said, I make a lot of speeches. Okay, I'm asked to speak everywhere. You're the greatest ad-lib speaker I've ever heard. And I had a notebook with me. I want to give me your tips on speaking. Well, he was very impressed that I wanted to talk to him about that. And he never really was prepared about how to answer, but he was absolutely the most in-demand speaker. He had no notes, but he just had such a sense of timing. And I think because of that, in large measure, why he was so popular. Wherever he went, everybody wanted to give him an award, so he'd come and accept it and make a speech. And for the most part, he was very good. A lot of the service groups in the area that asked him to speak, he'd go do it. And I mean, he was just remarkable how good he was because he had such a great sense of humor. And I claim Tom Izzo has improved dramatically as a speaker because of all the years that he was around Jud and saw what made Jud effective as a speaker.
Well, and I think Izzo even adopted some of Jud's mannerisms and cadence of speech, especially early on, once he took the head job.
He did. I mean, again, Jud never took himself. He didn't take life nearly as seriously. He got away from it in the summertime. I mean, the way these coaches go today, 24/7, 365, and get burned out. Jud was never that way. Jud was going to have a quality of life. It's not that he didn't work hard. He did work hard, but he was in a different era too. But the guy, I told Izzo, I said, you realize this guy survived for something like, 19 years as the basketball coach in a very difficult time. As you know, Big Ten men's basketball is an enormous sport at every school. They all want to do well. They all want to win. When he came here, from Montana with the athletic director, Joe Kearney, he took the job pretty much sight unseen. I mean, Michigan State had no basketball building. They had Jennison Fieldhouse. I remember Jud saying when he got here that, he had a better facilities in Montana than he did at Michigan State. They told him they were going to build a new arena. So by 1989, the Breslin Center finally opened. I remember when they were building the arena, I'd go over to his office for some kind of interview or whatever it was. And I said, so how's the arena going? He said, well, look across the street. It's going great. There's about 5 guys over there working on it right now. So, everything to him was a one-liner, one way or the other.
Yeah. Just incredible. And you're right. He is missed, certainly, in today's landscape of college athletics, whether he would have survived it or not. Speaking of surviving, we've got this Big Ten expansion now. We've got the college football playoff. And we've got coaches being fired in college football, major programs, left and right. And isn't this all or mostly a reflection of the business of college football today, the expanded playoffs? And man, if you're not going to be in that playoff, we don't need you.
Well, I think what's changed everything is the amount of money these coaches are getting paid, which they never used to get paid. I mean, I can remember, excuse me, back in Duffy's day, I don't think Duffy ever made more than $50,000 or $60,000 a year. Now, adjusted for inflation, it would have been more than that. But the other thing was, I claim the biggest change in college sports came in 1979 when cable TV evolved, because before then, when you only had a couple of the networks, there was no inventory or room to put all these college games on television. So you didn't have the media rights fees that you have. You had no place to put these games on TV. You're on TV once or twice a year, if that. You only had about 8 bowl games. And when the season ended, were like the seasons were 9, 10, 11. Now they're 12 games. They just kept evolving. We got to get more. Well, now where you look at it today, it's professional sports, pure and simple. But when cable came along and opened up all these different channel areas for inventory to carry all these games, now everybody's on TV virtually every single game, whether you play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, whatever it is. They're going to find room for even the smallest schools. So now the money goes up. They try to keep the best coaches away from the NFL. But when more is given, more is expected, okay? And I think that's where this issue is today, let alone, with this transfer portal where you can get players just with a paycheck.
Yeah, right.
There's no such thing as a 5-year plan anymore. I claim as good as Indiana is, and as the story that it has become, without the transfer portal, Cignetti could never do what he's done, because no Indiana coach was able to out-recruit Ohio State, Notre Dame, all those schools in the area, because it's not a big high school football state. But because of the transfer portal, Cignetti's gone and got the key players he needs that he didn't have to get out of Fort Wayne High School. You can get a few of those players, which he does, but the crux of Indiana's success is players that he's been able to lure there. And now they're, donor base, which is massive, including Mark Cuban, they're on the bandwagon because they're winning, and let's keep them winning. And I think that's what others see. And if our team isn't, winning, I mean, the fan base paying what it pays for tickets anymore. We want, success now. I think that's what helped get Nick Saban out of it too. He left on top because he saw all the changes coming, and I think it was no fun for him anymore, because it wasn't what the nature of what college sports were supposed to be in the first place.
Yeah, it's all different, that's for sure. A couple of months ago, I had Mick McCabe on the podcast as he retired for the second time from the Free Press, the prep sports writer, of course. I asked him the greatest high school player, athlete that he ever saw or covered. He said, number one, Magic Johnson. Well, Magic was right there in Lansing. You watched him grow up through high school to become, a national champion with the Spartans, and then an NBA champion. Your memories of Magic?
Well, it hasn't changed. When people ask me what was my favorite time on the air, and there have been a lot of them, but 75, 6, and 7 were his high school years at Lansing Everett. And look, and we did all of his games. We got smart. It used to be we were going to do a game of the week. And by 3 games into his sophomore year, we realized this is where the interest is going to be. He wasn't the only great high school player in the area at that time. I mean, there were a number of others. Jay Vincent was across town at Eastern. I claim they might have won the state title if Irvin wasn't around at Everett. And of course, those were in the busing days. Irvin was supposed to go to Sexton. He lived 2 blocks away. Mm-hmm. And then they bused him to a predominantly white school in Lansing Everett. Today, all of those issues are long gone. But what was remarkable about that time, when most high school sporting events, there's no issue getting tickets. I mean, they had to have extra police at all those games for 3 years because the place was so doggone jam-packed everywhere he went. Now, by the time he won the state title his senior year, the only storyline that caused tremendous stress amongst all of us to find out how this is going to work out was he going to either Michigan or Michigan State. It was always going to be one of those two. And I frankly thought for a lot of that, it was going to be Michigan, because between Johnny Orr and Bill Frieder, the coaches there, every time I saw Urban, one of those two was around him, that I saw him wearing Michigan gear. And the night before he announced, Jud had to speak at Wallen Hills Country Club, and he had this dour look on his face, and I thought he knows something. He didn't get him. And then I was driving back to the office, and Frieder and Orr were on WJR radio on the sports rap show at the time, and it sounded to me like they were a little peppy. But then the next day, when we were over at Everett High School in April, he had already, after the season, when they won the state title, he went over to Europe to play in some all-star games and that, and he didn't make up his announcement until he came back. And I don't think, frankly, he made his final decision till the bitter end. I think in a lot of ways Irvin wanted to go to Michigan, but the pressure here was so overwhelming to stay, and he was nervous about Jud. He would have gone to state in a heartbeat if Gus was still the coach, because he knew him well. And Jud was a different type of coach. In high school, nobody yelled at him, but Jud was, Jud was going to make him a better player. Jud was Jud, and Jud made him into a very, very, very good player. They won a national title with him. But around the time that he was here those 3 years, I enjoyed him at Everett more than I enjoyed him at Michigan State. And I called a ton of his games on TV at Michigan State. I tell people, they talk about the atmosphere in the Breslin Center today, and that's all great. But when Irvin was at Jennison Fieldhouse for his career there, the atmosphere in that place, I'll never see again anywhere in the newer arenas, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I never thought. Did I think he was going to be successful past Michigan State? Yeah. But the guy's one of the highest paid minority entrepreneurs in the world. I think he was extremely well grounded by his parents. His mother's still alive. He lost his dad a couple of years ago. He was extremely good to both of them, loyal to both of them. He's always been loyal to Lansing. And, it was remarkable to be around it. But if you'd have said he was going to win all those NBA titles, a gold medal, and everything else he's achieved, that was a stretch. In fact, just last night on the 30 for 30, I saw on ESPN on the Lakers Celtics, they showed some of our videotape of a game or two that we did on TV when he was in high school here. And when I think back to him, as unpolished as he was as an adolescent high school student, and how he speaks today and makes speeches everywhere, it's remarkable, obviously, his story in a variety of ways.
Yeah, just incredible. Never be another, quite like magic, that's for sure. We could talk all day, for sure, because of the stories. You need to write that book, Tim. I'm telling you.
Well, you know what? I did write one after the 30th anniversary for the hospital. I had a publisher come and said, would you write 30 years down on sports? So I did, providing that the revenue went to the Children's Miracle Network at Sparrow Hospital. So I did that, and I enjoyed it. Most of what I've told you about was in that even 25 years ago. And then Mike Pearson came to Fred Stabley and me on the 25th anniversary of the national title, said, would you guys write a book on the 25th anniversary of the Michigan State basketball team in '79? That took us 2 years to do, and Fred did most of the work. After those two, I thought the effort that goes into this with everything else you got to do, I've been asked about doing that since. I don't know how this is going to finish, Dave, or how it's going to play out, or whether that comes to mind or not. I haven't figured that far ahead yet, because I did it once before 25 years ago. I'll have to get you a copy of that. There's still a few hanging around here.
Well, I want to read it, and I want to read the next one too. How about that?
Yeah. All right.
So thank you for the time today. Congratulations on this incredible run on Lansing television that continues to this day, television and radio, for all of these decades. You have served the audience so well over the years, and I say keep on keeping on.
Same to you, Dave. Keep on keeping on. I've always enjoyed our friendship, your professionalism, the career you had in Detroit, which is a brutally difficult place because it's so competitive, but I always enjoyed being with you, and I figure I owe you a few favors too.
Well, we'll do this again. How about that?
Okay, good, Dave. Glad to do it.
Thank you, Tim. Tim Staudt, co-sports director, longtime sports anchor at WILX-TV in Lansing, covering Michigan State and the local sports scene there, joining us on the Dave LewAllen podcast. Thrilled to have him on the podcast. As always, we thank you for watching and for listening. Thanks to our producer-director, Josh Bowron. And again, you find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and thegreatvoice.com in partnership with WJR Radio. Tell a friend, like these, subscribe so you get notifications of our other great guests that will follow Tim Staudt on this podcast. Until next time, stay safe, be kind.